And I feel in these times when the world is divided over ideologies, the self-interest, wars, violence, the question of compassion has become really urgent. And we must ask this question in our heart. What is compassion? What is love? Perhaps love and compassion, they go together. One thing is really clear, that as long as we are living a self-centered life, a life which is just for my fulfillment, my gratification, my pleasures, my, when this egocentric life is being lived, then there is no compassion, there is no love in our life. This intelligence is perhaps with all of us, which is able to see what is not compassion or what is not truth. Because if we begin just by defining positively what compassion is, what truth is, then we are lost in the definitions, in the knowledge. But if we really want to existentially explore this issue, we have to see what it is not through negation. And for this seeing, one has to have a quiet mind, a mind which is listening deeply, observing deeply, which is in a state of humility, in a state of wonder and innocence. Then we are able to explore together and to see what it is not, what compassion is not. If, as we said, that any activity of the me or the ego, that is not compassion. That is actually denial of compassion. If I'm all the time thinking about myself, about my family, about my country, I'm obsessed with self-centered activity. And then there is no space. So how can something which is beyond this self-centered activity, which is beyond thought, can flower? And compassion, this is very clear. It can't be part of the field of thought. It can't be part of the field of the self or the me. When we see that somebody is suffering, that suffering arouses some feelings inside each one of us. Even if an animal is suffering, we see that a dog is in pain, we feel a kind of empathy, a deep empathy. Similarly, if we see that another human being is suffering, we have this deep empathy. This capacity of empathy is there with all of us. So is empathy part of this compassion? And we can only feel this deep empathy when we are not so much occupied in our mind, in our thoughts, in our stories. When we are totally living identified with our stories, we become those stories. When we are identified with our prejudices, we become those prejudices. We become those images. So then there is no space. How can I feel any empathy? I'm just living for myself, for my fulfillment, for my goals, for my ambitions. So for this compassion to flower, there has to be a freedom, a space. And this freedom is not freedom for the continuity of the self. We often think that freedom for the self. The whole world thinks freedom for me. But what Krishnamurti is saying, or these teachers are inviting, is that freedom from the self, not for the self. And unless there is a freedom from the self, there cannot be compassion. There cannot be the field of love. And this freedom comes by seeing the destructiveness of living this all the time, this self-centered way of living, seeing the danger of it. So the question is, why don't we feel really clearly the danger of this way of living, the mechanical, self-centered way of living? If we see the danger, then mind will hesitate to go in that direction. So why this is not clear? Why this perception is not clear? Obviously, because mind is too much occupied, too much busy, is never in a pause, not stopping. That's why it is so important to quieten down, to really allow our minds, our hearts, our bodies to be in a state of pause, silence. When this machinery becomes quiet, then it is able to perceive more subtler things, deeper things. Then it is able to listen to the suffering of the other, listen to the suffering of oneself. And as long as suffering is there, can there be compassion? And to feel this, to feel the suffering of the other, there has to be a deep perception from the heart to see that there is no separation between me and the other. All separation is based on my images. I project an image of the other, then I am not seeing other as a human being. I am seeing other as a label, as a story. And then, because I am also seeing myself as a label, as a story, I also see others like that. Then relationship is between two stories, between two images. And then we don't meet each other at the level of being. We are meeting just at the level of thought, at the level of self-centeredness. So how can there be any deep love, any deep compassion? Because for compassion to be, there has to be communion, oneness. So can we see what divides us? Clearly, these images which we built through our conditioning, they divide us. Unless we see that these images are false, they all belong to the past, they are dead. If I am living just like an Indian and my friend is living just like a French, then we are just images. How can we meet? Can we see each other beyond the images? And which is the fact? The image is dead, it's false. Can we see it? In order to see it, the mind has to be really clear. It has to be quiet. Because as long as we are living in the field of images, there cannot be love. There will be pleasure, there will be hurts, all these conflicts. When people are in the war, do you think they are having this war at the level of human beings? They have to actually believe that they are something. They are this, they belong to this nation, other is enemy. So we have to be identified deeply in order to hurt or kill another human being. It's easier to hurt another if we are living at the level of images. But suddenly if we realize that I am not an image, I am not an story, and the other person who is in front of me is also not an story, an image. It's a living being. Then how can you hurt? It is not possible. So the first step I feel is to see the falseness, the destructiveness of these images, to live like a story. We have to discover our true essence, the true being, which is beyond all these stories, all these past images, because every image is dead. It belongs to the past. It is not living, and life is happening here and now. Can I connect to this life? Can I feel that life is here and now? It is sacred. And if I am living at the level of thought, suffering is inevitable. Thought creates this whole idea of the ego, the me. Then me thinks that it is separate, independent of thought. I am separate from you. And then I am living like that, a bundle of images. So in a deep sense, if we see, the suffering is created by thought in the form of self-pity, self-judgment, comparison. I'm all the time feeling that something is lacking in me. I'm not complete. So there is no love for oneself even. There's no compassion even for oneself. So can I see that as long as I am suffering due to these false images, due to these false stories, I cannot know. I cannot really live what compassion is, what love is, what beauty is. That's why this self-inquiry is so essential to discover the true essence of life, the beauty of life. So, can we ask now, what is compassion? Can we feel it in our heart? And I can only feel it when there is a certain freedom from this self-created suffering. When there is a space within my heart, within myself. When I step out of this personal sorrow, then I am able to feel the sorrow of the world, sorrow of the other human being. That's why Krishnamurti always said, as long as suffering is there, the personal suffering is there, there cannot be compassion. At the end of suffering is compassion. So first of all, I have to really end this suffering, which is created by thought and the ego within me. Then I am able to connect the sorrow of the world, because people are suffering. It's a fact. We are all suffering. And this suffering is not personal. Though we experience it at the personal level, but if we start exploring it, then we can see that it belongs to the whole human consciousness. Then I'm not going into this whole field of self-guilt, self-condemnation, self-pity, which is very destructive. We all go through this self-pity. But if we are able to observe it as a stream of suffering in the human consciousness, and that stream is also passing through me, then I can see the root cause of suffering. And that root cause of suffering is ignorance, which is lack of awareness, inattention. Yeah. So inattention is the deep cause of suffering. So I have to ask, if I am in a mechanical sleep, maybe hypnotized by all these images, thoughts, stories, can I be awake to it now? An awakening can begin at any moment. This deep listening can awaken something inside us. If we listen from a quiet mind, from our whole being, we can see clearly what is the cause of suffering. And this seeing is attention. Seeing now is attention. Seeing the cause of suffering. That suffering arises when I am not aware, when I'm not listening, when I'm not attentive now, when I'm lost in my stories, then there will be suffering. And as long as there is suffering, there cannot be compassion. To see how I am living and how it is causing disorder, how it is contributing to the suffering of the other. This holistic observation, this passion to understand life is compassion. To be able to feel the pain of the other deeply. Because if I hurt the other, I'm hurting myself. If I'm killing other, I'm killing myself. Then it's a state of deep compassion. I wanted to share one statement of Krishnamurti we also discussed in our retreat. It's from the core of the teachings. When there is a negation of all those things that thought has brought about psychologically, when there is a negation of all those things that thought has brought about psychologically, only then is there love, which is compassion and intelligence. So here Krishnamurti is including compassion and intelligence in the field of love. They are actually one, they're not separate. Intelligence, love, and compassion, they go together. When the me is not there, this other field is there. When there is no ego, then when there is no me, that space is the space of intelligence, deep intelligence of life. It's deep compassion, deep love. And without this, whatever we do will bring fragmentation, will bring disorder. And we will continue to live with problems, artificial problems. The psychological movement of thought creates the problem, then it tries to solve the problem. So the same machinery which is creating the problem is trying to solve it. So how can it be possible? Only when the machinery stops, this whole psychological movement of the thought stops, which is the ego, then there is a possibility of compassion, of love, of beauty. And only love can solve all the problems. Or to be more precise, if there is love, how can there be any problem? If any problem arises, we can together talk, have a dialogue, and understand it. There will be no division. Because if we both are concerned about finding out what is true and what is false, and what is really good for all, it's not that my opinion or your opinion, my truth or your truth, but truth, which we can all see, goodness, which is for all. Then I'm concerned with really living life with a sense of depth, sense of sacredness. So do I see the value, the significance of this deep compassion? Thought cannot create compassion. Thought can only block it. So can there be an awareness when thought is blocking this compassion? When it is creating a separation between me and you, between me and the world, between me and the whole universe. So friends, let us have a dialogue. I have raised some questions, and please feel free to raise your perception, your observation, and slowly enter into this self-inquiry. And I invite all of you, please explore not just from the intellect, but from the heart, from the whole being. And just be aware when the knowledge is coming, because usually when we explore only from the level of knowledge or philosophy, then we don't go very far. It will be very limited. So can we explore from the field of compassion, this whole question of compassion, from the field of heart? Yeah. And if you want to say something, you can also, you're welcome.
First, I would say I don't know to answer any question. There's not question of knowledge or no more accumulation of knowledge. We tried to understand through knowledge, but it doesn't work in this way. Work in the sense of love and compassion. Perhaps we can explore what does it mean, perception and lucidity, awareness. We were this morning discussing in the last day of the retreat about this awareness, and many people express this fact of perception without words is awareness, and it is an art also. And if it is not a question of technique, but an approach, and comment dire, how to say, attitude. If we change of attitude, I feel it is the same. The only thing we can change it is attitude in front of this ignorance, in front of
this violence,
believing of knowledge, believing of belonging, believing identification of anything we are attracted or in opposition. And this change of attitude give a little unexpected phenomenon who give us the not smile, the joy of understanding